Thank you for joining me, viewers. Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. We're in the Watchtower study edition for November 2019, paragraphs 1 and 2. According to 1 Peter 4, 7 through 8, what will help us cope with adversities? There's signs, because they say we need good friends during the Great Tribulation, there's signs that are going to take place before the tribulation begins. One of those signs is there'll be a world leader that brings peace to the world like no other. But he'll be assassinated. He'll be mortally wounded in front of the world, so it'll probably happen on TV. There's all sorts of signs. So the tribulation isn't going to hit you if you're a Bible observer and world observer of world events. It's not going to hit you with too much surprise, but at this stage there's no sign of that taking place as yet. So the guessing game can be taken right out of when the tribulation is going to happen. But back to this article, which has been quite a circus really, considering that Jehovah Witnesses say true friends show love at all times, and we got lost in a few presentations there about shunning. Paragraphs 1 and 2, according to 1 Peter 4, 7 through 8, what will help us to cope with adversities? Well, one of the things that will help Jehovah Witnesses cope with adversities is to accept people outside their organisation. I know they have trouble accepting those in the organisation that don't want to bend the knee to the organisation's needs and wants, but they need to stop undermining governments. They need to stop undermining worldly people. As I said before in one of my last talks, the Jehovah Witnesses that I was speaking to down in the park the other day, women of all things, I was shocked, said they can't wait for Armageddon because people that have used Jehovah's name in vain will be dealt with. Look, viewers, I have to be honest with you, I've never heard anything like that. All the Christians I know, they are hoping Armageddon and the Great Tribulation is postponed for as long as possible. But not the Jehovah Witnesses. They want vengeance on the people that aren't Jehovah Witnesses, basically. So let's just read this. They've got a picture here as we're using for the background of the series, where people are huddled in an attic, obviously hiding from this kind of thing that I'm showing you here. This is real life. This is real footage from the Russian scandal, put up by JW Russia Video. It's part of their propaganda. You can watch that while I read. But this is the picture they're painting, the Jehovah Witnesses, of trying to dodge this kind of thing. Now, they're not going to dodge this kind of thing for several reasons. The Russian government went over their articles linguistically and decided that theologically their theology is corrupted and extreme. And I agree with that, because I was really, really shocked. As a simple Australian conscientious observer of religion, I was extremely shocked the way in which those Jehovah Witness women were trying to bring on Armageddon for the destruction of people that won't become Jehovah Witnesses. I couldn't believe their attitude. As we move deeper into the last days, we may face severe adversities. For example, after one election campaign, a country in Western Africa was torn apart by social unrest and mob violence. We have social unrest and mob violence happening all over the world. It's irrespective of the position of the Jehovah Witnesses. For over 6 months, our brothers and sisters could not move about freely because they were in a combat zone. My advice to people that are in combat zones, be Jehovah Witnesses or not, is to flee. And the governments will tell people to flee. If there's something going on in Western Africa, the Australian consulate will warn the Australians in that area to leave. Now, if the Jehovah Witnesses are ignorant enough not to leave, then they deserve everything they get. The Russian government has banned the Jehovah Witness organisation as extreme. Now, this isn't the first time it's happened to this cult. Now, if they want to, in one of a leaked video, they're in their private leaders meeting, hierarchy, top brass meeting, they said that Russia is taking on a mountain if they think they're going to take on the J-dubs. Well, be very careful what you say, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, because Russia just does not muck around. Now, if you're in a combat zone, honestly, if there's bombs going off around you, what are you going to do? Stand there with a Jehovah Witness cart? Is that what you're going to do? Or several of you, if you don't want to do it on your own? Are the brothers and sisters going to stand there with you? No, I honestly believe that Jehovah Witnesses, like anybody else, are going to run and get out of there. And if you don't, you get what you deserve. What helped them to cope with such hardships? Now, this is more than hardship. This is what would you say? This is crisis. This is a crisis point. This is a point where you have to get out. If you're not a military person in a combat zone, you need to leave, or you're going to be maimed and killed. This isn't a time of hardship. This has got nothing to do with religious work. This has got to do with intergovernmental or sociological battles. You're not going to stand there with a cart and take them on, are you? So some found refuge in homes of brothers living in a safer area. Other brother reported, in such a situation, I appreciated having friends around me. We were able to encourage one another. Okay, this is what a war zone looks like, viewers. This is graphic footage. You can have a look at this. Well, are you going to think that the Jehovah Witnesses are going to be standing in a war zone with all this sort of thing within a combat zone? This is real. People die in combat zones. They're not the sort of place that you just stay around. This sort of language is so far from reality, it's not funny. In such a situation, I appreciated having friends around me. We were able to encourage one another to do what? To stay with a cart? Look. No, you want to be encouraging one another to get out of there. Get your senses together and get out of there. When the Great Tribulation strikes, we will appreciate having good friends who love us. You'll appreciate more than that. You'll be trying to stay alive. So it is urgent that we build strong bonds of friendships now. Now, the problem with this is, and let's just face it, the Jehovah Witnesses don't want to build friendships with people outside their organisation. They don't want to build friendships with people that are not Jehovah Witnesses. Some more Civil War footage. Do you think the Jehovah Witnesses are going to be hanging around there trying to make friends and all the rest of it while all this sort of stuff's going on where they're trying to be missionaries? No. We can learn much from the experience of Jeremiah, whose friends helped him survive during the time leading up to the destruction of Israel. How can we imitate Jeremiah? Jeremiah's got nothing to do with this sort of civil unrest, which is what they're talking about. They're talking about, and they mentioned themselves here in the article, a combat zone. Do you think the Jehovah Witnesses are going to be encouraging one another to stay out there in with the carts in this sort of thing, or hide in homes and stuff? You don't see Jehovah Witnesses helping these people that are fleeing war. You do see the Red Cross and the Salvation Army and all these types trying to get in and help, but you won't see the Jehovah Witnesses organisation get involved in this sort of charitable work. You just won't see it. It's not what they do. So if Jehovah Witnesses want to, play the persecution game for an organisation that's regarded as extreme and a cult, then go right ahead. You're not going to find any example from Jeremiah, because you'll see Jeremiah got his mates to go and do his dirty work. He didn't risk it himself. So I'm going to hand this over. We'll look at some videos. This is Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist, New South Wales, Australia. I hope you enjoy the following presentations. Links will be left below.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. We recently had a comment from Mitch Stevens, who suggested we do a video on the peace and security issue, and he was responding to some of the comments in the Revelation video that went up just a few days ago. And I thought, yeah, that's great. Thanks, Mitch, because we've been thinking about doing one on peace and security for a while, but it seems like such a huge subject, because you can't get into the peace and security issue without touching on a whole bunch of other things connected to Revelation, to Daniel, to Matthew. You're going all over the place, as the Watchtower indeed habitually does. So thanks, Mitch, for giving us the incentive, pushing us the rest of the way to want to do it now. Because yes, it is, as Mitch pointed out, very much on the minds of Jehovah's Witnesses all the time as the sign you're looking for to trigger all the other stuff that will lead to Armageddon. So we'll talk more about what connections they make with it as we analyze the issue going back, well, to the beginning, because they've been talking about peace and security as a connection to the Armageddon scenario since the days of Russell. But I thought first, for most of the people who will watch this video, most are connecting it to the pronouncements of the Watchtower over the last 40 to 30 years.
So did you want to read the verse first?
Yeah, I think it would be good to read the verse we single out if we're Jehovah's Witnesses.
The familiar one.
The familiar one. Sometimes we read around it a bit, but this is the thought we focus on.
So that's 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Whatever it is that they are saying, whenever it is that they are saying peace and security, then sudden destruction is to be instantly upon them, just as the pang of distress upon a pregnant woman, and they will by no means escape.
So, in your mind as a Jehovah's Witness, who are the they?
I don't think I ever asked that question. Who are they? I would automatically think it has to do with the governments, UN, they're going to pronounce peace and security for the world, and then we're going to know.
So it's going to be an official pronouncement on a worldwide basis by some huge organization like the UN, specifically the UN in the way they picture it on the front of the Watchtower sometimes. All right, so I wanted to look at this set of comments by David Reed. We've talked about David Reed before. He did a series of excellent books for Baker Bookhouse back in the 1980s and 90s. Some of them are still available if you want to go onto his website. This one is Answering Jehovah's Witnesses. Came out in 1996, significantly just about the time they changed the generation teaching. This is his comment about peace and security and how the Watchtower takes this thought and runs with it back in the 1970s and 80s. David says, painfully conscious of the need to defend themselves against the charge of being false prophets due to the failure of Armageddon to occur by 1975, Watchtower leaders have used extra caution since then when making predictions. Nonetheless, they have continued to make such predictions. One technique they have employed is to say enough to convince Jehovah's Witnesses of the likelihood of Armageddon by a certain date without actually spelling it out in black and white. In this way, they inspire their followers to put extra time into their door-to-door work in a final home stretch effort, without leaving an incriminating trail of failed prophetic quotes. Thus, Watchtower and Awake articles in October 1985 tied in the United Nations Proclamation of 1986 as an International Year of Peace, with the biblical warning, whenever it is that they are saying peace and security, then sudden destruction is to be instantly upon them. And that, of course, is that verse that Vivian just read, 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The October 1 and 15 Watchtower magazine covers displayed photos of UN headquarters, along with the bold headline, Peace and Security. Although unrecognizable to outsiders as a prophecy that 1986 would see the end of the world, the message came across loud and clear to JWs and sent them practically running from door to door to sound the final warning. Less than 2 years later, the April 8th, 1988 Awake magazine added to its prophecy of, quote, a peaceful and secure new world before the generation that saw the events of 1914 passes away. That's page 4. The authoritative statement that, quote, the Hebrews reckon 75 years as one generation. That's on page 14 of that April 8, 1988 Awake. By the way, the month we were disfellowshipped. Jehovah's Witness readers worldwide added 75 years to 1914 and come up with 1989. Without coming right out and saying that 1989 would bring Armageddon, Awake concluded the discussion of 1914 and the 75-year generation by saying, quote, today, most of the generation of 1914 has passed away. Jesus' words will come true. Mm-hmm. This generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. This is yet another reason for believing that Jehovah's thief-like day is imminent. End of quote. That's page 14.
So it's worded again as if it's Jesus' words.
Jesus' words will come true.
Instead of Watchtower words.
Jesus' words have passed away now, according to Watchtower understanding, right?
Yeah, he gets the blame.
So, David Reed says, although they avoided making another statement that could be quoted later as a false prophecy, Watchtower leaders still created in JW minds great expectations for the year 1989. We've addressed that in another video about Glasnost. We'll take that up a little bit more in some quotes later in the video follow-up to this. These subtle predictions for 1986 and 1989 are cited here as evidence that the corporate false prophet has not repented. Because it is true that most of us think of the last significant date for a false prophecy has been 1975.
Yeah.
So how did they get away with this mix and match approach to Bible prophecy?
Well, part of it is I think they're learning. Like he says, they're learning not to leave a trail. So they do it more by conditioning your mind to make certain assumptions when you see certain statements by them.
Trigger words, trigger phrases, trigger pictures.
Yeah,
in their magazines, on the front of their magazines, now in vivid color, which they didn't have back in Russell and Rutherford's day.
So you mix and match scriptures too, and relate them to each other.
Yeah. So we thought the first thing we should do in talking about peace and security is get away from the verse and get into the immediate context. The 11 verses around this verse, starting at chapter 5, verse 1. So we'll read down to verse 11.
Now as for the times and the seasons, brothers, you need nothing to be written to you. For you yourselves know quite well that Jehovah's day is coming exactly as a thief in the night. Whenever it is that they are saying peace and security, then suddenly destruction is to be instantly upon them, just as the pang of distress upon a pregnant woman, and they will by no means escape. But you, brothers, you are not in darkness, so that that day should overtake you as it would thieves. For you are all sons of light and sons of day. We belong neither to night nor to darkness. So then let us not sleep on as the rest do, but let us stay awake and keep our senses. For those who sleep are accustomed to sleep at night. Those who get drunk are usually drunk at night. But as for us, who belong to the day, let us keep our senses and have on the breastplate of faith and have on, and love, and as a helmet, the hope of salvation. Because God assigned us not to wrath, but to the acquiring of salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. He died for us, that whether we stay awake or are asleep, we should live together with him. Therefore keep comforting one another and building one another up, just as you are in fact doing.
So a bunch of problems right away. One is times and seasons. Isn't this the very thing that Paul...
In Acts 1:7.
Paul's taking up an idea that's already been revealed by Christ to the apostles before Paul was converted, about that doesn't belong to you to know times and seasons.
Yeah, so he's saying, I don't have to write to you about that.
You have no need.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for us today? Well, it obviously means that you don't need to know anything about a UN or a world empire of false religion to understand this prophecy properly.
Yeah.
They already have instruction on this, and they're a young congregation. This is not, therefore, advanced knowledge. What's the basic message here? You yourselves are aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. That's not a new thought.
Yeah, thieves don't drop you a note to tell you when they're coming. So you're not going to know the when.
So I think even the translation of verse 4 is a problem. How did they render verse 4 again?
It's strangely worded. It says, but you, brothers, you are not in darkness, so that the day should overtake you as it would thieves.
Well, that's not the thought of the context, though, is it?
But they do have in the footnote that it could be translated, overtake you as a thief.
As a thief would overtake you.
Yeah, so because, it's not the thief that's in danger here.
That's right.
It's us being caught.
So the setup here is for the analysis of who they is that will be saying peace and security is there's only really three personages in this little analogy he's using, right? That's the sleeper, the person who's not asleep, and the thief.
So that they are the sleepers, the people who are just going along merrily, saying peace and security. Their life is normal, everything, they're content. They're happy, and the contrast is the ones that are awake. They have belief, they have faith, they know the day of the Lord is going to come, the second coming.
That's what it's about, right? In verse 2, this is the day of the Lord. This is not a sign that you will have to watch for that the day of the Lord is coming. This is the day of the Lord overtaking you.
Now they have translated it Jehovah's Day, but it should be Lord's Day.
Well, there's another problem that is not a minor problem. Day of Jehovah in verse 2. Well, if you just look back to verse 17 and 18 in the prior chapter, you realize the Lord here is Jesus Christ.
17 says, afterward, we the living who are surviving will together with them be caught away in clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And thus we shall always be with the Lord.
We Christians will always be with the Lord. There's the hope of the early Christians. And then again in verse 9 of chapter 5, God has not destined us for wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ.
And says, so Jesus Christ is attached to Lord.
So it's a violation of context as well as Greek translation to do what they have done with verse 2. So the suddenness of this, it's not a sudden announcement that the day of the Lord is coming because destruction of religion occurs.
It's not about Armageddon.
So how is it that you have in your mind that all of this is tied to world empire, false religion, and the United Nations and a beast?
And some great proclamation by them. That is something that they have planted in your head and conditioned you to thinking about all the time whenever you hear the expression peace and security. You're not thinking about relating it to people having a kind of casual attitude or a normal, living normally and thinking everything's dandy. Everything's peaceful. And most people on the planet are like that. They're pretty content with the way things are. If they've got a home and a job and a family, they're going to say, I'm
hunky-dory. I can sleep securely. And that's impossible to conceive of if religion has been destroyed. And all the stuff that you remember from Jesus' sayings about that day being like the days of Noah, everybody's doing everything normally, and then all of a sudden destruction comes. Men and women are being given in marriage.
They're not awaiting the day of judgment from God. That's not in their scenario at all. They're thinking life will go on the way it is.
So, of course, this fits in the Watchtower's way of looking at the second coming, which is a long-term presence. Now, well, from 1874 when they first said it began. Now in 1914, it's already 105 years long, this second presence of the Lord Jesus. So it fits in with this idea that you'll only know he's present by a number of signs, and apparently the last of those signs will be the fall of religion. But this really is a scary tribute to the power of propaganda and mind control, that you automatically connect all these thoughts that are not in the context.
Yeah. In the passage, there's nothing about signs of times. You're actually told it's going to come like a thief. You're not going to know. They're not going to know. The difference is that you're awake. You're an alert believer.
Yeah.
And in expectation, always. So you're always ready.
That's right. So you're not awake because of times and seasons and special signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the next segment, we want to see how Ray Franz looks at this same passage and how he analyzes how the Watchtower habitually gets away with this Armageddon alarmism.
And jumping from here to Revelation 17, right? Making
Humpty
these
Dumpty
kind of
hermeneutics.
yeah,
Yes.
strange connections.
That's in the next segment.